Can you tell our audience about removing a thought form from someone that wasn't your parents for the first time, maybe? Because another thing you do,
Yeah,
you remove these things for people.
yeah. Yeah, I do. Okay, but they're wanting me to, okay, they're wanting me to go back a little bit here, which I should.
Okay.
To get to that. But so yeah, so my mom and I started doing this like every day. And then what ended up happening was still you know, still while they were claiming to be Jesus and this and that, right? But by that point I was channeling the two female guides.
Mhm.
So they had introduced me to Mother God. After a while of like trusting them, they had introduced me to Mother God. And I just by that point I was so like intuitive, and I could feel, okay, I should trust this. This is positive. This isn't negative. So then I'm channeling, Father God and Jesus and Mother God, so that was kind of a development. But then what happened was my mom and I, we just started like, okay, we're just going to do this every day. And just every day we would channel. Um, and my mom would write it down. I would channel and she would just write it all down. So, and a lot of it then was definitely BS. I was not protecting space, nothing. But there was also a lot of truths that definitely came through for sure. Also, what was weird was they started having us call on so many different things. Even though we were in Christianity, it was like, okay, you're gonna call on mermaids now. We're
Okay.
like, oh, okay, mermaids, and
Yeah.
you're gonna call on animals now, and you're gonna call on archangels, and you're gonna channel them, and it started becoming that where they were having me channel all kinds of things. So even if it wasn't all coming through accurately, there was still that experience of let this bullshit go, and just there are all kinds of positive entities out there that you can be tapping into and hearing from.
Mm.
So it became that, and just every day we're doing this. But then the other thing was, okay, so you have entities. So this kind of takes me back into, okay, this place isn't real and your mind is creating this. And it's like, okay, but we have all these problems. And it was like, okay, so what gives you all of these problems? Even things like death, like what makes death real? What makes all of these things real? What makes getting sick real? What makes all of these negative things real? So then they really started talking about entities a lot, that negative entities. And they were talking about demons, obviously. They would actually use the word thought form. They
Okay.
were also using the word thought form, but I didn't understand what the heck a thought form was.
Mhm.
Um, and they could not have explained that to me back then. But I still felt like it was true, and I didn't really think about it. So but like they would show me like visions, for instance, of like all of these like snakes and things like in me, you know. They were also talking a lot about like, well, you have various bodies. That was something that wasn't true in Christianity at all. Well, you have a spirit and you have a soul. Well, now I think of it as like mental body, emotional body, energy body, physical body, and then also your astral body. So it ended up becoming that. But back then it was like that was more like what they were able to like get in there, like get away with.
Yeah.
So and I remember one time they were showing me like my soul, and like in my soul there were like these snakes and things. And it was like, oh well, these two different bodies
Mhm.
both both have almost like a different set in a way of these things. And they were like, you have to get rid of those. You need to get rid of them. So then this started becoming like a real thing that my mom and I just started doing like crazy. We were like, we got to get rid of all these things. And I was like channeling like names of them, and we were like, okay, we were basically like doing like self exorcisms is what it ended up turning into.
Yeah.
Um, where they were just having us pull them out, and it looked nothing like the way that I do it now. It was like actually looked pretty ridiculous, but they were basically having us. That's true. Yeah. When I get it, I'm going to get into another story later that will actually make that seem very, very unridiculous,
Mhm.
and will just show how actually real that was, what we were actually doing. But they were actually having us like think of like this thing is in there, right? And you're gonna, yeah, and we were just saying, okay, I pull you out. And of course we were using in Jesus name, because that's, what we had to do as little Christians, right? but we were saying, though, I pull you out, and we were like thinking of this thing in there, and we were thinking of like grabbing it, and they were having us like actually like do it, like we were literally like doing this, and like we were like imagining it, and we would keep like imagining that we're like pulling this out of my mom, or she would do it out of me, and then then they would just tell me like when this thing was out. Well, I had a crazy experience with that, where um where they now said, okay, you need to remove the demon called religion.
Mm.
And the thing is, in Christianity, you could say that, because in my sect of Christianity, religion was a demon,
Mhm.
because they thought of it like, oh, well, you have this one-on-one relationship with Jesus, and you know he's supposed to be able to just communicate with you every day, and it's almost like it's supposed to be like an intuitive type of experience. They would never have used that word,
Right.
but that was like the idea of it. It's supposed to be spiritual, you're supposed to be like one with the spirit, it's supposed to flow, you know um and so religion was thought of in this way, like almost like the difference between like Catholicism and my religion, because in my religion it was like praise and worship and speaking a bunch of tongues, and um, people, you know, putting their hands on other people and they're just falling over, um, as opposed to like, and swinging the incense back and forth and all wearing the robes and doing prayers all out of a book. So it was like that, like kind of
More
concept.
exciting.
Yeah, it was like, you shouldn't, it should be more still a one-on-one relationship with God, where you don't end up closing off to that because you're just
Mm.
in this like sort of religious indoctrination in a way, even though we totally were, you know. Um, but anyway, so yeah, religion was a bad dude, right? So we were, could totally say that, they could totally get away with saying that. So they said that, okay, well, now you need to get rid of the demon religion. So so we exercised religion, and what is really crazy is within about a week and a half of removing this demon religion, all of a sudden it was like my mind went from, this like crap is like in it, to suddenly this like angle, the way that somebody that is outside the religion views it. Suddenly I had like that angle, and I'm looking at it with that angle, and I'm going, this is such BS. What am I doing in this?
Yeah.
Jesus isn't God.
Yeah.
Like, God is God isn't God. you know,
Right.
this God, this God, God isn't God. This is like, yeah, I don't have sins
Yeah.
that he died on a cross for to forgive. I'm not some imperfect, pile of junk that just will go to hell,
Yeah.
if I don't continuously pray for Jesus to wash my sins away and,
Mhm.
forgive me and save me. Like, it's actually, when you think about something demonic, I mean, that is in a lot of ways severely demonic. Like, it's so negative, and really puts people in a lot of bondage, self-doubt, makes them feel really unworthy, guilty, sinful, all these negative things. So I
Not
removed
to mention the
that.
blood sacrifice.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that's
I
cannibalism.
sorry, go ahead.
The cannibalism, the cannibalism is something that should be talked about on another subject, but I don't know. Cannibalism.
Yeah. but yeah, so like, we removed that, and all of a sudden I had that view. um and I feel like my mom removed that one, that there were still others in her where she was still kind of hanging on, but at the same time she listened to what I was saying, and she kind of felt like she just had to follow that. And at the same time she did have this thing removed, so she didn't feel like she could just stay at the same time, you
Mhm.
know but me, I was just fully like, oh, this is going out the door. I was like, I'm not listening to this no more.
Yeah.
I am not doing it. This ain't happening anymore.
Mhm.
so, so yeah, so I had that experience. And then I started studying like other religions. Um, and then I remember, so I'm getting into this next thing. This The first time I removed one from somebody else, other than my dad, I removed one from him, and obviously I had already removed a bunch from my mom. So this was another family member. I mean, some people would think of this as like an immediate family member, but in a way it was like an extended family member, because it was my grandma, but we only saw her a couple times a year, I would say. She lived like 2 hours away. So we went 2, maybe 3 times a year tops. We didn't go that often to see them. Um, and I just wasn't very close with her either. So I remember driving on the way to their house, and at that point I was already, like I said, I was already like studying other things, and we had bought this African tribal music, and it had this song on there that was like, it said that it was this shamanic like priestess, and she was like, there was like a sick person, and she was removing the sickness from them. That was one of the songs on this CD
Yeah.
that we were listening to. And I was like, I was so into it. I was listening to like all of a sudden I was listening to like a lot of music from other cultures suddenly.
Mhm.
Um, so I had that going in the car, and my dad is like in the back seat, and he's like reading the Bible, and he's totally fine with the music, right? And then I remember I just mentioned to him what was playing. I just told him what it was. And then he's sitting back there reading the Bible, and within like 30 seconds he goes, hey, Anna, could you turn that music down? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So then we're at my grandparents' house, and we, for like Christmas, I think it was, we had bought, my uncle, who still lived there because he was mentally handicapped, so he lived with my grandparents his whole life. But so we had bought him this, it's like an old record player, right? But it was brand new, but it was a record player. So, because my grandparents had an entire room just filled with old, videos of like Wolfman, and all those really, really, really John Wayne, Humphrey Bogart, all those like old films, right?
Mm.
So they had a whole room of that and records. So we bought him this record player, and we I think there was like oh, skipped again, but I think there was like a CD like thing inside of that record player. So we put this CD in there, and like my grandma is like she's like almost deaf, so we had to like turn it up really loud, and she can like hardly hear it. And then all of a sudden, one of the like tribal people just screams, ah, And I remember my grandma is like, oh yeah, or whatever, like she had some like funny reaction. And it got to that one song, and like my dad has been just fine the whole time. All of a sudden he comes out of the back room, he comes into the other room, and he's like, hey Anna, can you turn that music down, just because it had specifically gotten to that song.
That's
And
funny.
I was like, no. I just told him no, because we're at their house. They're like almost deaf. They can't hear the music if you turn it down. So I was like, no, you know. And by that time, he didn't know what to do with me. He felt like he couldn't really say anything to me. He wasn't aware that I had left Christianity at that point. He found out later, and then he was like coming around just saying like a million scripture verses and things, because he just thought we were into like all this like demonic stuff and all this. But anyway, so but during that visit though, like they constantly had like movies playing. They were always watching these old films, and like they would turn the volume up to like a piercing level.
Mm.
And I'm like in there, like my ears are just like, oh my freaking God. And I turn and I see my grandmother. And she used to do this thing. All right. Like, if I do this face, I'm sure I'm gonna just annoy the crap out of somebody, because that's how I felt about it. But constantly she would just stare like with like her eyeballs, like, and I'm just like looking at her, and she's like doing that again. And I was just like, okay, this is a freaking demon. Like by then, I think I was calling it thought form. I was already out. I called it a thought form. It was like, okay, this is a thought form. I cannot stand this thing anymore. Like I couldn't stand looking at it all the time. She was like doing this all the time. She had done it like my whole life. Ever since I had known her, she was doing that. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm taking this stupid thing out. I can't stand seeing this anymore. So at that point, yeah, I didn't even do the whole, like thing, obviously, because I'm in there. So I literally I was just visualizing it. I was just visualizing that I'm removing this thing. I was just like visualizing that it's there, and I'm removing it. I'm pulling it out. And I kept doing it until I felt that it was out, or they told me that it was out. They probably just said it to me. And then all of a sudden she just stopped doing it. And I never saw her do it again. And like I said, she had done this her whole life.
Yeah.
That I had known her my whole life. She had done that. And it was so freaking annoying. And so I never saw her do that again.
And she
Literally.
probably didn't notice either. She didn't notice.
Sorry.
Did she notice? She didn't say anything. I mean,
No, she had no idea.
no idea.
She had no idea. I mean, because I think the reason that she would do that is just that's like a thing of like you're so like phased
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
And so I think she would have had enough like phase out things like supporting that, even if they weren't doing the eyeball movements, to just keep her too phased out to like even be bothered realizing it. But she never did it again, which
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah.
That's very gratifying. It's probably like, she probably on some level agreed to that
Mhm.
experience with you so that you could have the experience of knowing that you could
Mhm.
do it.
Well, yeah, because I mean, typically like now, especially, like I only ever do that with somebody's permission. So Unless it's like, an animal or something, like if an
Yeah.
animal were sick or something like that, that would be different, you know. But for a human
Will,
being,
right? Like you have to
mhm.
free will applies. People mm,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, well, animals, it's not like they can say yes or no, but also an animal would generally just want you to do that anyway.
right, of course.
So, but yeah, but yeah, permission is definitely a thing. So yeah, I'm assuming she would have agreed to that in some way, because also my guides also were there and
Yeah.
completely allowed me to do that. So, and intuitively even I felt to do it.
Mhm.
So, but so I can get into the other one now, or
Yeah, you want to?
sure. So 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 yeah, I kept channeling the council. They still hadn't told me who they actually were. Um, like, I knew I had guides, obviously, but I was channeling still like archangels, deities, but so often it would end up my guides
Mhm.
were coming through as those archangels or deities or whatever. Um, but my clairvoyance started to finally come back again, because I was really like asking for that. And then I feel like these specific experiences, some of this was actually the archangels. Some of this was like actual deities that I was seeing. But this one that I had, I feel like my guide again was like sort of standing in for this. So what I'm going to get into now are like appearances. Basically, these were like visible, like apparitions, I guess you could call it. I think usually we say that when we're talking about a ghost. In this
Yeah.
case, it was archangels, it was deities. Um, but yeah, I continued channeling them. I started to be able to like see energy in the room. This was when that started, but it wasn't like all the time at that point. But like here and there, I started to be able to like see energy more and more in the room. And they started giving me this exercise all of a sudden, where they had me meditate, and I called on like the four elements we were connecting to in this meditation. I'm saying we because I ended up doing it with like a group, and that was how they presented it to me at first. But honestly, the group ended up kind of falling apart, and I feel like it was really just to like have sort of a reason to give me this like exercise, right?
Yeah.
But so we so they had me so they had me yeah, connect to like these four elements, and there was like this whole, like, it was like a meditation, right? So there was this whole like visualizations that I would do to like connect all four of those. And then they had me visualize that like out of the ground there's this obelisk, and it's shooting up, and it's shooting like way out into space. And then they had me start calling on these specific deities, and also Archangel Michael. So they had me start calling on, it was Green Tara, this goddess. She's not as popular, but her name is Chango. So those two goddesses. There was one other goddess. I'm trying to remember um, which goddess it was. I don't remember. It might have been Kali.
Mhm.
But maybe the reason that I don't remember her is because she didn't visit me. So, um, but it was three goddesses, and then it was Archangel Michael. So I would call on these three goddesses, and they would have me visualize them as like a color, and at the same time say their names and like visualize the colors coming down. So Chango is like this deep, like berry color. And so she would come down this obelisk, and then um, first I would call down Archangel Michael down into the obelisk, and then I would call down these three others. So obviously green Tara was green, and there again, I don't remember even what color Kali was, but we would visualize. I would visualize there's this door on the obelisk, and Archangel Michael would open it, and these three goddesses would come out, and they would come into this circle.
Mhm.
So it was like a sphere, and the obelisk would like go up through the bottom of the sphere, it would go up through the top, and then these deities and Archangel Michael would come down through, and they would come into this sphere. um so I keep doing this exercise, and what ended up happening was, well, first I started just seeing like archangels. The way that I was seeing them was a little bit kind of vague. I wasn't seeing like faces. What I was seeing was these pillars of this white energy. It kept coming to me at night. So at night, all of a sudden I would turn and I would like look around the room, and there would be these like distinct like pillars of like white, just up and down, just straight up and down, just white pillar of energy. And there would be like a lot of them in the room, like some nights. And then I had this one night where I woke up and I looked up, and up above me at the top of the ceiling, there's this huge green orb. And inside of this green orb, there is green Tara, like the image of green Tara. She's inside the green orb, and she's meditating. She has this like very serene like look on her face, and she's just there in the orb. And I'm just laying there on my bed, just like looking up at her, you know. And I was like very detached with it all,
Yeah.
which is great. Like that's a good way to be.
Right.
I was very detached with it all, and I'm almost viewing it as almost like in this kind of scientific way. This
Yeah.
is how I was sort of viewing it, like, oh, this is happening. This is interesting, you know. So there was that. But so and this is the experience where I really feel like Mimcat specifically was kind of standing in actually for Archangel Michael, because I had this visitation from Archangel Michael, but I know that really it was my guide. It was Mimcat.
Mhm.
Um, but I still feel like he was taking on like an appearance of him, of like how Archangel Michael could come. And what distinguished Archangel Michael from the other archangels, who were just these up and down pillars, was he was this up and down pillar of light, but then there was a right hand
Mm.
that was like, it just looked like this. You could just see the palm like kind of stretching out a little bit, like through this pillar of light. And so I didn't see like a face or a body or anything, just this light, but could see the hand. So so I'm laying there. Now at this point, this is when they were like really, this is when they were explaining to me, right around this time. It was very soon before that experience. They were explaining to me what a thought form was. And the way that they explained it was, well, when you have a fear and you are dwelling on that fear, you create a conscious fear. So you're feeling afraid, and you begin to dwell on the feeling, and it's like, you know, there's energy everywhere, right? This stuff that I see, this is just energy, is vibrating everywhere. Well, this energy is there, just untapped. It's what we call empty space, but it's not really empty. It's this vibrating energy. But what it is it's unused energy. You haven't, nobody has used it to manifest anything. And obviously that's just infinite. There's an infinite supply of that. No matter how much stuff you manifest, there's always going to be still the same amount, an infinite supply, right? But all of this energy around us, we haven't used it yet. It's just there just to create something, and it hasn't created anything yet. So if you're dwelling on fear, what happens is a pocket of that energy becomes this conscious fear, becomes like this little baby consciousness over there, and all it knows how to do is just feel fear. And it automatically becomes it automatically is in your energy field, and it needs your energy in order to survive. So it starts feeding you fear. It starts sending you the fear. And if you feel that fear and you dwell on it more, or even if you just feel that fear for a minute or two or for a little bit, you're going to feed it. You're going to feed the consciousness, and the consciousness is going to grow, and eventually it will be able to take a form of its own. Eventually, the voice will get stronger. The voice can end up branching out into other things. But you developed that consciousness by what you were dwelling on unconsciously. You didn't realize what you were doing, but you were dwelling on something negative, probably out of something that you already had.
Yeah.
You know. And now you've created this new side thing, which is why we have so freaking many
Mhm.
that we need to remove.
Yeah.
So they were explaining that to me, and but at the same time, it's like, even though I'd had so many experiences that proved all of this, at the same time it hadn't quite clicked,
Mhm.
just that this is real. I
Mhm.
really have all these things in me that need to come out. They really are there. I really did create them. So this one night I'm laying and I see, Archangel Michael, and he's there again, and I see the hand. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's him, you know. So my guide really, but whatever, posing as Archangel Michael for me. And so I see his hand, right? Well, so I'm laying there, and all of a sudden, his hand, like, he kind of hovers above me, right? And this hand grabs like at my chest, and he pulls, and I see this like silverish, whitish, kind of grayish, whitish, um, like a cord coming out. Like it was obviously just totally energetic, but I saw this thing like coming out of my chest, and his hand is holding it, and then I see his other hand, and he's pulling this thing. He's pulling the I'm seeing it. I'm seeing this like and it looked pretty solid. It was almost like, God, I'm trying to think how to describe the way it looked, but it really did look like a rope, almost like, kind of like a jelly, kind of like almost texture, or maybe even kind of a snaky kind of texture. But it seemed like something that you could like actually grab, that he's pulling out. So he's doing that, and again, I'm feeling so detached about all this, and I'm like, oh, okay, great, he's removing something from me. Okay, cool. And I go to sleep. So I wake up, and I'm laying there in the bed. And all of a sudden I look up, and so at this corner of like the ceiling that was kind of close to my bed, and this is where I had seen green Tara. So I look up there, and now in that spot I see this orb that is it's really, really murky, and it looks like this brownish, yellowish green kind of color. And inside of it, there is evil, wicked snake face. And the look was like really diabolical. Like it is looking at me like with this like very wicked, kind of fierce, but like happy almost about it. Kind of grin. Just like a just diabolical face, like almost like he is hungry and wants to almost like eat me or something. Was like the kind of
Yeah.
like on his face, almost like, oh, you're a meal, you're a target,
Right.
kind of thing. I think this was I had a lot of like victimization entities, so I would say that this was one of those.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at this and I went, oh, okay, so here's the thing that Archangel Michael pulled out of me while I was sleeping. Well, that's really interesting, right? And I'm just like, huh, okay, it's there. I'm here, What now,
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, this huge orb of this deep, airy light comes streaming into the room. And I'm telling you, it was the exact color that I had been seeing when I was doing this visualization of Chango coming down this obelisk into this sphere I had created. And all of a sudden she comes over here and she comes like a little bit like a little bit like away from me, but like closer to me, like right over here. And just this in this case I didn't see like a face in the middle. What I saw this big fairy orb, and as it got closer to the center it got lighter and lighter, like so the center was like a pink, but like a really light, like almost like whitish pink, as it got closer and closer into like the heart of this orb. So she comes there, and then I see this snake was still like, yeah, kind of look on its face, and it comes up, and oh my God, like this was happening like I'm watching this happen like a little bit above me, like just like a little bit like over my head, like I'm just like laying there and like I just woke up, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, but still like feeling pretty detached, like I said. So I'm now what happened was I was just basically started witnessing like this epic like battle between these two. It was the weirdest freaking thing. So um Chango out of this center of like this whitish pink in the center of this orb, this light starts just shooting out of this center and going towards this thing, and then it is also, but it was more like from its mouth, um is sending out these kind of, it was more like balls of this light. And I remember hers was like, it would get like, again, it had this thing of like being like more berry and getting like pinker and pinker and like lighter as it went out. And they're just doing this back and forth, and I'm just like watching this like 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 over myself, like as I'm laying there I'm just watching this, like I'm just there for the show. It's just
Yeah.
like give me some popcorn. I'm just watching this epic battle
Right before your eyes in your bedroom.
my head, like visibly out in front of me. I'm witnessing this. And I was just like, again, I'm feeling like detached, but it's funny because I also at that point had entities, because like my whole life I had this thing of like don't cry, don't feel anything, so some of it was my detachment, which was a good thing, but then some of it was like a thing to cover over emotions that were there, which I almost perceived as like weakness.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking on like this really masculine kind of approach to things. Like I would get really angry. That was an emotion I would let myself feel, which would end up sometimes like feeling like it's almost like out of control. But then other emotions, sadness, things like that, I didn't want to let myself feel, you know.
Mhm.
So I ended up with like an entity, for instance, where even later on when I started to try and like let myself cry, I would notice, okay, the second that tears start to form in my eyes, even if now I'm letting them out and I'm not like swallowing them, they automatically suddenly disappear like into my eyes.
Mhm.
So I had like stuff that would like close me off to like my emotions. And that was definitely also part of what was happening there. So it was like a good and bad thing because at this point, all of a sudden, um, I started like almost like praying, but not exactly, but like in my mind, just like calling on Chango, even though she was already there doing this. But
Mhm.
to me, I was like almost like trying to like enhance the energy of what she was doing, right?
Mhm.
And I think I'm just feeling like detached or whatever. Well, as soon as I did that, right away, this thing starts to get the upper hand and she starts moving back and she ends up going away.
Mhm.
And then and then he's there, but then he ends up just like fading away and like dissipating where I'm not like seeing him anymore.
Mhm.
So then I was like, okay, well, let me just do this exercise again. So I do the exercise, and then in the sphere I see like this thing's like face like flash like right in front of me with my eyes shut. And so then, and obviously I was just like calling on Archangel Michael. So I know my guides ended up just removing it away when I called on them, but then they explained to me, well, you were fearful and you were praying out of just being fearful.
Mhm.
You weren't just letting this happen and trusting that it was going to be taken care of. You got afraid, and that's what that was actually out of. And of course something that that gives me a victimized feeling and preys off of fear is going to end up getting the upper hand from me doing that.
Right.
So they let me see all of that, they even let me see her lose
Mhm.
based off what I did and what I put out. And obviously it ended up working out, but but that was a huge, like, obviously learning experience, and
Yeah.
like a lot of lessons there. But also that was when it really clicked for me. That was when I really went, whoa,
Yeah.
okay, this is real. Like I knew it was before,
Mhm.
but then it like took this whole new level of concreteness
Mhm.
where I really, really understood it. I was like, okay, if somebody has a problem, if somebody's getting sick or whatever it is, it's something that is there in them, attached to them, and it can be removed. You know, doesn't matter what it is or what it seems like. It doesn't matter if they were born with it or whatever it is. And I'm not saying everybody could end up experiencing it being removed, because some people have contract to have certain experiences for their life. Like my uncle, for instance, I know he contracted to come in that way, have that experience of being mentally handicapped.
Mhm.
That was not going to end up happening,
Mhm.
but it was still obviously not himself. Like that's obviously not um, his true self that has that. So in other words, he had contracted to have something attached to himself that enabled him to have that experience, which as just his divine pure soul, he could never have had. He could
Right.
never have had the experience because you as only yourself,
Mhm.
well, you are so high vibrational, you're so pure, you're so good, you're 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 pure, you're pure source, there's no negativity, so you in order to have a negative experience, there has to be something within your vibration,
Mhm.
not you as in like your true
Right.
self, obviously, but within you as with like within your vibration, um, that can match those things.
Mhm.
And so your soul will contract to allow certain negative energies, negative thought forms, negative vibrations, or whatever kind, whatever entities, thought forms that can give you that experience. Your soul will contract to have that experience, and that's the only way that it can actually have that experience. Because again, it has to have something lower than itself. It has to have something that is negative, since it is not.
Right.
It has to it has to allow that in order to even have the experience, in order to even have the experiences that we have here.
Mhm.
And I realized that, like, okay, this is actually real. You can actually get rid of like a severe problem by finding the source of what gives the person the problem to begin with, and actually pulling it out of the person, now for some things that might take like a long time. Some things are like, my grandma, the thing in her eyes, that was like, you know a few minutes and she never had it again. But then some things, if a person had a stroke, how many entities, how many thought forms have developed into creating that stroke, so yeah, so sometimes it can take longer than others, but that was when that really clicked for me. Like, okay, all of this stuff that they've been saying to me about entities, about thought forms, is all real. The reason that we have all these experiences is really because of that. You really can change all these outer things. And sometimes, even though this is all mind, sometimes the reason that your mind can't just click and manifest the thing that you want is because you have something in your vibrational field that isn't matching that, and you have to remove it, and then you'll be a vibrational match to the thing that you want, because you already were to begin with. It's just that you had something else there that wasn't the vibrational match for it, and it's obviously more surfaced than you are. And so that's the thing that the sort of universe around you is primarily picking up on when it feels your, like, the resonance in your energy field, so man, that was what did it for me.
Your stories are just amazing, and listening to you tell them, and you know I'll just share with the audience, I am uh, grateful to be a recipient of some of your services. And when I first learned about negative entities, um, I wrote a blog post about it recently. And in writing that blog post about it, I really realized how difficult it was to deal with it in the very beginning. Like, it was so shameful. I felt so guilty. Like, I had done something wrong, but of course, that's what the entities have always made me feel. So as soon as I
Yeah.
even gave the thought that there may be entities, the entities were on it saying, oh no, that's just you, that's how you are. But then, as they've been cleared and as I've come to know them personally and how they operate, and I recognize their feelings, I realized that, yeah, I couldn't have had this experience without them. And now that I have been going through clearing them for a year, I'm still not finished, but it's almost like, imagine this: you're at the final performance of a Broadway show, and um, you're the star of the show, and you have all these co-actors and players in this play, and suddenly you're in the middle of this play and you're interacting with all these players, and you suddenly wake up and realize, wait, this is a play.
Yeah.
This isn't real life, and you guys are all my buddies. You guys are all helping me have this experience. It's like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you to all my entities, and thank you for helping me. Look, this show is over. We're going on to the next scene. Thanks for if you guys are also skilled in wisdom, and this is what we're doing in the next scene. Otherwise, we're done. Thank you.
Otherwise,
Bye.
peace out. Yeah.
curtain call, thanks for the
Yeah,
ride.
yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I have a ton of questions. I don't know how much time you feel like you have to answer entity questions, because this is going to be entitled exorcism. It's like
Right, yeah.
we think of it as "Ah, but it's not. It's not like that. We all have them, and
Yeah.
removed is not, epic fantastical fantasy Hollywood. It's really real results and real change and retrieval of control of your life.
Yeah, I tell this to clients sometimes. Most of my clients, I don't really need to say this to, but once in a while, I get somebody who's a little bit newer to things, and I'll just, if their guides might bring up, entity attachments, and a lot of times in the case of a client like that, they'll have me kind of explain, like, yeah, Hollywood and just our society. They think of like this term exorcism, that we're kind of using a lot in this interview, which I don't personally, I don't use it that much, just for the reason of what it brings up in people's minds. Because I think of like, oh,
Conjures.
yeah, yeah, they think of like the exorcism of Emily Rose,
Yeah.
and like, no, I mean, if you watch that movie, it's obvious there again, she contracted to have that experience. That was very obvious. And she must have had some distinct types of entities that entered her in order to be able to do that. That isn't typical at all whatsoever. That isn't normal. And so people associate only that with, because I don't believe that that was actually a demon at all. Now it may have been a type of demon, but it would have been like a different class. Like for instance, you have angel, you have archangel, you have different classes of angels. It's the same with demons. You'd have different classes. This is why, like before in the vision, I was saying, well, he was calling this other demon master. So clearly, this demon was like a principality, and this one was a demon. That there are levels, just like with angels, that there are levels. So, but most people think of like, oh, demonic possession or, entity attachment is like that. It means like possession means you're, speaking all kinds of archaic languages, well, you're not speaking them. They're just coming forth out of your mouth in some like crazy male voice or whatever, or, three voices at the same time, like what was coming out of her. um, well, I think that was important because what's really interesting about that movie is at the end of that movie, she has that experience where, well, not at the very end, but towards the end of the movie, that the priest tells her account of this thing that happened to her, where she wakes up really early in the morning, like at dawn, and this voice of Mother Mary, because she was Catholic, is calling to her. And so she goes out, and suddenly she's pulled out of her body. She's having this astral experience, and Mother Mary is there out in front of her, and she's saying to her, you can choose to go back, or you can choose to leave now and not suffer anymore. But if you choose to stay, you'll show the world that a spiritual world exists. That's what she said, and I found that really interesting, because we talk about positive things all the time.
Mhm.
So when they're saying a spiritual world exists, what did they really want to show with that experience? They weren't trying to say angels exist. Well, people love angels. They want to believe in angels. They wanted to show demons exist. They wanted to show thought forms are real. Thought forms exist. They wanted to show, the negativity exists. It's real. It's part of the experience here. You got to live with it. You need to deal with it. You need to look at it, and I'm going to let this soul go through this tremendous, really, terrible experience that she contracted to have, just to show that it's there. um, because it gives you access actually to your unlimited self.
Mhm.
If you look at the things that actually pull you down in weight, then your soul will be able to expand and move higher, you
Mhm.
know, which it cannot do when these things are holding you down. So I don't remember what I was saying, what I was saying before that. Um, but
But what they were trying
that's
to
something that we
show.
really need to look at, you know.
Um,
Sorry.
well, we were talking about what that movie was trying to show, and you've almost covered like several of my questions, you know. I mean,
Oh,
basically
really?
saying everybody on earth has them.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, I remember what I was getting into though. People associate, possession just with that, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but generally speaking, possession is not that. Okay, think of hunger as a for instance here. Okay? If you go for too long without eating, suddenly you feel this welling up inside you. "Ah, I have to eat. I've got to eat. I need to eat right now. I need sandwich right now. You know. Well, possession is like that.
Mhm.
Possession is you have to do something. You need to do something, or it's just something is coming over you. So I'm going to I'll give a couple examples here, and this again is going back to my childhood. So as a kid, I actually had a severe allergy to meat and fish. I also had a pretty severe allergy, not as bad as with that, but also to eggs, and I didn't know it. And my parents were giving it to me because obviously they didn't know it either. They weren't like forcing me to eat it, but we didn't know. And so for years, I was like almost like every afternoon. It got to the point where it was literally every single afternoon, around 3, 4, I would just be laying on the couch in the house, and I wouldn't be able to get up. Sometimes for the rest of the night. And then there was even a patch
Mhm.
where literally for like over a month, just every day, all night, I was just laying on the couch, you know. Um, but back then, even I this was already past when I was 9, and so I remember I'd be going like I'd have to get up to go to the bathroom, and I'd feel so like horrible and sick and everything. And I remember I would say these scripture verses. I would say, "By His stripes, I am healed. By His stripes, I am healed." As I'm walking to the bathroom, and then as I'm walking back to the couch, because I already had that in my head. Um, but so I had that experience. But then there was this one day I remember um, where I'm sitting on the floor, and all of a sudden my stomach starts to turn. It starts to get a little bit nauseous. And there was this thing I always said I feel sick whenever that would happen. So that starts to happen a little bit. And then suddenly I hear this voice in my head, just loud, so distinct, clear as day, totally detached, not like a thought of my own. It was say so once in a while it's like a guide would step in and just like sort of create space between me and what was there. I'm just like suddenly I would hear it as completely another thought other than my own. So I hear this and it sounds exactly like my voice, only it sounds really exaggerated.
Yeah.
And it says, "I feel sick," like that. And I heard that in my head. And I was like, okay, this is, of course, back then I was saying a demon, but I was like, okay, this is a demon telling me I'm sick and making me sick. you know. Back then I had no idea what to do about that back then, but still I had that like awareness.
Mhm.
Took me a long time to get rid of that one also, because also that there are also lessons sometimes that a person has to learn. There are things that they've contracted to do, things that they're required to learn. For me, I needed to get rid of meat. This thing was not going to leave so long as I was eating that. It was really lowering my vibrational field. I'm not saying, everybody needs to stop eating meat, but I'm saying for me,
Yeah.
I had to stop eating meat and eggs and fish, and eventually I stopped with dairy and everything. So then I just went vegan, obviously. Um, but then there was another experience I have. Speaking of dairy, there
Mhm.
was another experience that I had in that same house. It was like probably around the same time, where going to the fridge to eat, suddenly I hear this again, a voice. It sounds like my thought, but it's so detached, like something is talking in my head,
Mhm.
and it just says, I want some cheese. Like, that sounds like so retarded and random, you
Yeah.
know. But for me as well, like those foods were giving me problems,
Mhm.
so I actually, for years, I really had an addiction to cheese. Actually, it was really hard for me to actually let go of cheese.
Hi, Anna. My name's Christina. I'm also been addicted to cheese.
Oh my
There's a good reason for that, though. It's got opiates in it. It's a freaking drug.
god. Yeah, yeah.
So, oh, anyway, go ahead. What?
But yeah, so there was just there were moments where I would hear this, just like I talked about how I would hear names with other people, same type of thing, only I would literally hear the thing in the process of sending it to me, but suddenly it's detached, where now it's not coming through as it 99.9% of the time it does for everybody, as your own thought. It
Yeah.
seems like you, it feels like you identify with it. So there was this there would be these moments here or there that would just make it so, like, lucid, for me, and
Mhm.
in this very detached way, like, this is something distinctly different from myself, you know um so but what I was getting to was, I was just talking about, how common it is, how this is something that people have. This is something that we experience here in 3D, because without these things, as the soul that you are, you can't have these lower experiences without something lower that attaches to yourself. And so, um, as I was saying, that's what possession is. It's an overwhelming feeling, whether it's suddenly your stomach is turning and you feel like this is like coming over you, you know, um, or it's compelling thoughts. Oh, I need to go and do this. I need it. Whether it's like a drug addiction, for instance, you know, or cigarettes. You're going throughout your day, and then suddenly, oh, I need it.
Mhm.
Comes over you suddenly, right? Or maybe it grows, over time. Maybe it starts sending it to you, and if you don't listen, it gets louder and louder. It can be that way too. But that's possession. That's possession. It's just, that is a thought. That's a feeling possessing you. It's possessing your mind. It's possessing your awareness. It's making you dwell on it, catching your attention. It makes you want to do this thing or that thing that's bad for you or harmful for you. You know, um, Whether it's a food that you're addicted to, that really doesn't serve you, you know, or it's an ailment you have, that you experience, that just overcomes your body, you know. Um, or I feel like I will go ahead and take it this far, even things like death. I mean, think about it. You're a soul, okay? You can experience that. Your soul, obviously, your soul's immortal. Your soul can experience that. And people will think, okay, well, yeah, but that's just because that's what my physical body does. But again, going back to the whole like thing that we've been expanding on for this whole thing, that I remembered as a kid, which is that this place is mine. It isn't actually real. It's not tangible in the way that we think it is. It's your mind. It's your mind controlling the whole thing. Well, um, you are not your body. You're not your form. You're the driver. The body is not the driver.
Mm.
You are the driver. You are the driver of the body. You you are you are allowing whatever the body decides to do. So we don't actually have to die. We die because we choose to. We die because our spirit, for most people, their spirit contracted to have a death experience because they can't have it out there.
Yeah.
Okay. But all of these things, because what is it? It is negative. It is. Like, we don't want to say it is because we think that we have to go through it. So then we don't want to say that it is. Okay. But to me, even eating, okay, is something that we would not naturally experience on our own. To me, breatharianism is what we would experience naturally. And here's the reason: because your soul, well, everything is energy. Everything is energy.
Mhm.
It's an infinite supply of energy. Your whole body is made up of energy. So how does it lack energy? It can't. That would be literally impossible. You know, and your soul is this infinite supply of energy. That's all it is. That's all you are. That's all your body is. So anytime, even me drinking this water, that's, even though I was saying being hydrated, it lifts your vibration. That's true. For a time that can serve. If you're not a breatharian, right? If you haven't reached that, and again, not everybody is contracted to reach that. Not everybody is meant to get rid of every single little thing that they have. And I'm not saying that, but I am saying um, that the reason we're even able to experience this feeling of, oh, I lack, when obviously that's an illusion. Obviously that isn't true. When you actually break it down and think about what that would mean, there's that law in physics that says energy cannot be created or destroyed. That's a law of science. That's a law of physics. So if energy cannot be created or destroyed, then that means it's always there. The same amount is always there. There's always an infinite supply of it. It's not going anywhere. Energy is what your whole body is. And so eating is not a real thing. It's that's you stepping into the illusion. Again, I'm not saying, don't eat, because there are things in you that will give you a lot of problems. If you don't slowly address the things that you have, if you just stop eating, you're gonna have a lot of problems because of the things that are in you that you haven't removed. And again, not everybody is meant to go that path.
Yeah.
But I know I'm like, I mean, I know you already know this, but for whatever audiences this goes to, I know I might be, for some people, getting really, really deep here.
Mhm.
But when you think about it, okay, if it's all mind and there's no actual lack and everything is energy, then how do we experience the illusion of running out of energy? We get tired. We have to go to sleep. And again, going back to death, what is that? It's your body is decaying. Your
Yeah.
body's falling apart. I remember this experience that I used to have when there was a short period of time where actually it was right before I started putting out the council's messages, and actually even during that time, when I was putting them out, I was still at this job where I worked in this produce section at this store. And like I said, at that time I was seeing energy, And I would see like, this white, like kind of static moving around, but then I would also see this black energy, like clouds of like black energy around. And there would be some times where I would be in the store, and I would all of a sudden I would see this like black energy, and I would like follow it. It would be like this huge like trail. And like I would follow it every single time. And no offense, okay, to the seniors or whatever. Okay. This is just teaching, Um, every, people go through this here, Um, and we all have those types of entities and thought forms. So this is not, to offend anybody. Even, him obviously could, but
Everything can offend
but
anyone. It's their choice whether it offends
yeah,
them or not.
exactly. But it will always go to a senior person, and always the type of person it would go to would be like this really old, like more debilitated person that would be like leaning on a cane, or they're having trouble moving around, they're having trouble walking, they're doing everything really slow, they're falling apart. And I realized just from seeing energy, well, for a child, um, you hardly see energy. You hardly see like any energy like trailing them. Like I wasn't seeing any energy like that. It was like their energy was like very close to them. It was like very close together. And it was like the older that a person got, the more that their energy would like spread. And I was like, well, isn't that like aging?
Mhm.
Because the older that they get, it's like their body is like falling apart. It's almost like the cells are kind of like spreading in a way. They're like getting further and further like apart.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like something that's like actually happens. I have no idea what the actual process is.
Well, my psychological thought process as you're speaking is thinking, oh, well, look at how, when we're a kid, we're focused on ourselves and our play and our needs and our joy, and we're totally, completely narcissistic and self-centered.
Yeah.
And as we grow older, we become narcissistic, most of us, many of us, in a different way, in that we start putting our energy out there to control things out there so that
Hmm.
we feel, you know what I mean? Instead of focusing our energy on us, we're putting our energy in all these different places that we can't
Yeah.
control,
Yeah.
and we can never get it back, because getting it back would require realizing, wait, this is my energy, I deserve this energy, and I shouldn't be giving it to all these people, because anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, like, even if a person contracted to experience, death and even aging at the same time, do they really need, because this is all mind, even if they wanted to have that experience and they felt like I did contract to have that experience, go for it. But do you really need to be all bent over and have the debilitating experience of it, and like what is giving you that? Because because again, it goes back to this thing of I feel sick, you know um and it's not true that the older you get, your body just has to fall apart and die in this like really detrimental, like suffering type of
Mm,
way.
right, too.
you
So
know
you're
that's the way you have to leave here. It doesn't have to be like some traumatic almost thing. Like you don't have to choose that. You can just decide, okay, I'm gonna fall asleep one day, one night I'm gonna fall asleep, and I'm just going to peacefully transition because I'm not meant to be here anymore. And maybe I age, maybe my hair gets gray or whatever, if that's the experience that you want to have. And I'm not saying that you have to have that experience either, but because to me, you don't. It is mine. It is 100% mine. Even if I were to do that, it would be my mind. It would mean I hadn't chosen to get rid of all of these things, and I know that for a fact. But people don't have to have this debilitating, life threatening illness is what takes their life away eventually. They don't have to have that. They can at least, if they don't want to, do the surrender the whole thing, which I don't blame them because that would be, you know, huge, right? But is such a light way of putting that for us right now in this society, but they at least, recognize that their ailments are coming from something that is not them, and look at them
Mhm.
and work to remove those things rather than just accepting that that's part of who they are, it's part of them, it's part of their life here, and just identifying with it. Because a lot of seniors, it's like they're bored, they don't have a lot to do anymore. And I'm not saying all seniors, and again, I don't mean this as like, offense to anybody, but there are a lot of seniors, we've met them all, where they'll come up to you and they'll say hi, and you'll say hi, and how are you, and then they'll just start going on and on and on about their ailments, and how debilitating it is. And like some people get like very, very like attached to an ailment, and they really want to identify it. Okay. And okay, like even if I didn't get rid of it immediately and it took me a while to remove mine, the reason that I ultimately did get rid of it goes back to, that stupid Christian scripture of by his stripes I am healed, and the fact that I was saying that, and the fact that I wasn't claiming it, I wasn't owning it, I was detaching myself, and the fact that there was a separation where I was claiming my space and I was saying, no, this is me. This is who I am. I am healed. I
Mhm.
am fine. I am well. I am not, I am not this thing. And
Yeah.
I understood this thing is other. It's other than me. It's separate from me. And when you do that and you stop identifying with it, right there something breaks. Whether you remove it immediately right then, which is absolutely possible. And there have definitely been some things that I have 100% done that with. Like I had I had this experience, for instance, and this um this is kind of going into my awakening a little bit, but I'll say this one little one because I think it's relevant for this. But there was this experience I had where um, this was a generational thing that I had, so it passed down through my family. I know that because my great grandmother had this, and not everything gets every single person. Some things skip, and then they'll show up in another person. Um, but she had severely dry, cracked hands, and she had it worse than I did. But I wasn't able to wash my hands with soap. Um, and I was hardly even able to put them under the water like at all without them just getting extremely, extremely dry. And like I hated lotions. I hated like the feeling of it.
Mhm.
Um, so like my hands would just be like really dry all the time. And so there was this one time where I started doing like things like this. I would try and like give my mind like permission slips sometimes, is instead of just going, this isn't real, this isn't real. I would sometimes I would do that and it would work. Sometimes I would try and give myself like some type of permission slip. So this time, like I turned my faucet on, and I said to my mind, I said, okay, this is magical water, and I'm going to put my hands under the water, and I'm going to rinse my hands with this water, and it's going to heal my hands. My hands are going to be healed, and this is I'm never going to have this again. And I did that. I put my hands under the water, and I haven't had it since. And that was 10 years ago, maybe. That was quite a while ago. So sometimes like I would give myself like some type of permission slip, but the thing is I would detach myself from it, and I wouldn't claim it, I wouldn't own it, I wouldn't identify with it. I wouldn't, say, um these are the things that I have, unless it's like necessary and like really relevant to a
Yeah.
conversation. But even then, like that's different. That's not you like claiming it. Maybe you need to tell a doctor what's wrong. Maybe
Right.
your cure ends up coming through a doctor, because it's also through feeling. Like I had an allergy test where I found out, oh, I'm allergic to all these meats and fish and eggs. That obviously really benefited me to have that, and to realize that and start cutting all of that out of my diet, you know. So sometimes there's a process, and sometimes it's like that, you know, magical water
Yeah.
just washes away this the thing that you have,
Yeah.
you know. Um, because you know the point really again is that this is all mind, that this place isn't actually real, that magical things can happen, that magical things do happen if you actually set the intention to make them happen, if you set the intention that they're going to happen, that you allow them to happen. And I don't mean make them happen like force them to, but I mean do the things that you intuitively feel, and do the things that are going to serve you, and start to shun the things that don't serve you,
Yeah.
and start to break away, and start to call things out.
Yeah.
You know, if something is plaguing you, instead of just going, oh, I'm sick, you know, instead of, or whatever it is, you know, it could be an emotional thing, it could be something mental, it could be an addiction that you have that comes over you. Just don't own it, you know. Don't own that thing. Separate yourself away from it. Okay, and they're wanting me to give this so this one last story here. So this is actually one of my dad. So my dad actually, phew, I feel like my dad had a lot of problems, you
Mhm.
know, but I really do feel like my dad was a star seed. He had a lot of really strange experiences, especially when he was coming into Christianity. Yeah, had a lot of weird spiritual experiences. He had like an experience where he kept over and over and over praying for Jesus to save him because of this guilty thing that he had. Like I told you, shameful, guilty, sinful. He, you're only supposed to pray it once, and then Jesus is supposed to save you. Well, he felt like, oh, I don't know, and so he kept every night laying in his bed just asking, Jesus save me, over and over. He just kept saying this. So he has one experience where he actually felt like he was levitating in his bed, and like the room was like full of light. He just saw light all around himself. And I told him at one point, I was like, there was a Hindu lady who actually he told the experience to, like trying to like convert her or something. And she just said to him, oh, I've seen that too. I saw that light too. Yeah. And he was just like, oh, okay. And I remember later when I got older, I remember you're muted.
Oh, I knew this.
Yeah.
I was just like, well, my light was yours is demons, right?
Yeah, exactly. When I was older, though, I actually said to him, well, you know, that's actually a common Hindu experience, Dad. You know, and he didn't want to hear any of that. He was like, oh, well, Paul saw a light, you know.
Yeah. When we,
Yeah,
yeah, well, we'll talk about
I'm like,
Paul another time.
okay, all right. You know, I know you feel too guilty and need a savior. I get it. So I'll leave you with that. Like
Well,
I understand what that's out of, and
yeah.
you clearly have contracted to have that experience for this lifetime. I won't take it away from you. Okay. All right. But as he like had converted and everything, like he was trying to be like, you know, really on point, right? He's trying to be Christian, you know. Well, he had this addiction to cigarettes, and so he hated it, and he was like, at that point anyway, he did. Before that he didn't, but he was smoking like a lot of cigarettes a day. He obviously got to this point because he was Christian. He was like, okay, this is sinful, you know. Now, if you're gonna use Christianity in a positive way, that's an awesome way to
Mhm.
use it. Okay, you want to say something is sinful, great. Yeah, harming yourself, self harm. Okay, which smoking cigarettes, sorry, it's a form of self harm. You know, not everybody would want to hear that, but it definitely is. It says on the back of it causes cancer for a reason. Okay,
Over
it
here,
harms you.
over here it
Sorry.
says smoking kills. Please stop now.
Oh my God. Yeah. So we all know, we all know it's self-harm.
Mhm.
It's filling your smoke with lungs, right? Sorry, filling your smoke with lungs,
It's been a long time
filling your
since I
lungs
filled
with
my
smoke.
smoke with lungs. So
Oh, did you smoke at one
I
point?
used to fill my smoke with lungs all the time. I had a bong just for it.
so so he started praying. There was one night where he was really praying, um, remove this addiction, right? So he wakes up the next morning and he told me every morning. So see, it starts off with a different addiction because he told me every morning he would drink a cup of coffee and he had to have his cup of coffee. And he said, and right after that, he would start craving a cigarette. He would go and have a cigarette. So this morning, he wakes up, he makes his coffee, he goes to take a sip, and suddenly the coffee makes him really nauseous.
Mhm.
And he was like, ugh, I can't drink this.
Yeah.
And and that was what broke it for him. He never smoked a cigarette again,
Yeah.
because of that. So again, permission slips, right? Like sometimes, hey, sometimes religion is a permission slip for a person. Sometimes a person will pray, and that would be their permission slip, or even once a person leaves all that, sometimes asking the universe, or asking your own mind, or asking your guides, remove this, or help me get rid of this. That's a huge permission slip, you know. Once we sort of take our own power back, once we leave religion, praying usually not so much, but still asking can be a really big, powerful permission slip for people as well. So yeah, that was the last story there. um, that that I'm gonna share. So I don't know if you had any other questions, because I figure I've answered like a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of them have been answered. We did talk about how many, I mean, not all of them, of course, but there are a lot of different kinds of entities that have different
Hmm.
kinds of effects on people. They can affect other people besides the people they're attached to, which, you know, I've experienced that personally. I feel other people's entities trying to engage with me, or the entities attached to me. So
Hmm.
that's yes. And you know, there's this one question. I feel like I just want to make sure that that's the one, because we did talk a lot about these, but the thing, I guess this is also close to my heart, about mental illness. you know when you're talking about being possessed, there's probably more ways than we can even imagine of what it looks like. But for me, the way I have experienced it is I'm there and I'm aware and I'm watching from inside myself. Um, but when I actually feel possessed, I'm compelled from within to say and do things that I don't really want to say and do. And I really, I try to stop myself now that, I'm aware, but I always have, even before I knew what it was, but I can't. It's like it's not me. And I used to tell my former handler that, I don't know why I behave this way. I don't know why I say these things. It's not me. I don't know what it is, but I can
Hmm.
just tell you, I swear, it's not me. And I was like, okay, whatever. But now that I know what it is,
Yeah.
it never was me. And it was them the whole time.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, and I know a lot of people. I've met a lot of people with mental illness, and coming to understand that negative entities exist, just, I mean, it was like the scales fell from my eyes and it all made sense.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, the question is, um, there's a strong connection between entities and the whole concept of mental illness. So what can you share? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one thing that you and I talked about was the shame surrounding both of those concepts.
Mhm.
That a lot of people feel ashamed of the idea of having a mental illness. A lot of people feel ashamed of the idea of having entities. Both are kind of things that society doesn't really want to own or want to address or want to look into. I would say especially entities, because most people don't even believe in entities. But they also want to make you feel like, you're crazy, or like there's something wrong with you. Um, if you want to address those things, or if that's coming up for a person, because a lot of people, like if they're having depression or something, for instance, ongoing, or bipolar or something, I mean, there are other underlying things. There's something they're not satisfied from. If a person is disassociating something, usually that's going back to a trauma. There's some fear from some traumatic experience, or maybe experiences that they've had, because disassociation is actually, this is, a lot of people would, we have a spiritual term for it where people call it soul fragmentation. Not everybody puts those together. Um, and I don't think of this as soul fragmentation, because your divine soul will not fragment. It is intact. Nothing can touch it. That's the part of you that won't be touched by this 3D experience. Now, what can happen is your energy body, your mental body, your emotional body, parts of them can. So this is, to me, I don't even want to say to me, because I like to, I really, to me, this is like, this is what I've experienced in my sessions and everything. This is what it actually is parts of these bodies, if they experience something traumatic, and it can be big, it can be medium, it can even be small sometimes, depending on the way it impacts a person. The person says a specific thing to them, it might seem like a little thing, but the person really reacts. It's like a piece of them feels like, I can't handle this, I don't want to be here. And so a piece of whatever body is most affected by it, whether it's the mind or the emotion, or just their energy in general, their energy body, it's like a little part of it will pull back, pull away. That's soul fragmentation. So it's not really your soul is falling apart or something, and this piece of you is still there, you know. But what tends to happen is that, okay, this part pulls away. Now there's a space, there's space there, there's territory there that you're not taking up. You're not in the space anymore. You're out here, you
Mm.
know. And I'll tell you something. Entities love space. Anytime I do a session for anybody, like the most important thing is I clear them. What the freak is the point of clearing them if I don't fill the space? So after a session, I call it sealing. I call it sealing the space. Now, okay, now I'm going to seal you. Now I'm going to seal the area that I cleared. Okay, because things love empty space. Negative things love empty space. If you're not taking up space, then they're going to want to come in and fill the space. So that brings way to disassociation. So disassociation is like this two-part thing where you have this pullback initially from this traumatic experience, and then something else fills the space because you aren't anymore. Now maybe there are times when a person, like this is common too, where a person ends up popping in after a little bit. It was temporary. Other times the person just, especially depending on how traumatic it was for the person, if it really, really affected them, then they're just going to stay out here, and eventually something's going to fill that space. And now it's like this part of them, if something begins to remind them in some way of that experience that they had that caused that pullback, or this specific thing took the space, and there could be more than one for people, so there could be more than one type of trigger, right? But if there's something that in some way reminds them of that experience where this thing pulled, their part of them pulled back and this thing came in, then whenever they were triggered to remember that experience, now whatever took that space is gonna, there's gonna be this feeling of being compelled for that thing
Mhm.
to come forward, because you stepped back. You don't want to address that. This is like triggering you to escape, to pull back, right? So there's going to be something else that has this compelling energy to, okay, I'm going to say this and I'm going to say that. And the reason that you so feel like you want to talk, you're back here, you're witnessing it all, and you want to talk so bad and you can't, it's because the part of you that actually needs to speak in that moment is the part of you that's over here, that's still back. And so that part has to be pushed back in. But at this point, what it actually means is it can't, because there's something else filling the space. And so in this case, it becomes again a two-step thing, where first you have to remove the thing that's filled the space when you left it, and then it will actually automatically come back in. And as soon as you remove that, then this piece of you, soul fragment, like they call it, this piece of you will come back in. So to me, there's like so many things that you can get to, but obviously depression, is not something from your soul. Obviously, all of these, whether it's an emotional disturbance or a physical one, we spoke a lot about the physical, but for instance, like irritation for me was a big thing. I mentioned that at some point in this interview. A lot of anger, towards my family, and just feeling victimized by them. This caused a lot of anger. Well, that's obviously not coming from my actual soul. It's coming first from a feeling of being victimized, which is an entity. Then it's coming, or maybe more than one. It could be a group, and then next, it's, well, there's a lot of fear involved. I feel like we're like adding ingredients here, right? There's fear. Fear can make you do this, but ultimately it can also make you do that. It can make you go in the opposite direction as well. But fear can also, out of the victimization, make you not confront things and not set boundaries with people. And then out of that, you're first going to start feeling a positive anger, actually, as a response to try and give you some adrenaline to just say, hey, no, don't do that. Say no to this person. You don't have to do this thing. You need to set boundaries with yourself, maybe with other people, maybe with this drug addiction that you have, or whatever it is, right? And you need to set a boundary. And the more that you don't listen to that, well, then it starts to feed some. Okay, so I guess I'll just jump right back in.
Hit record.
Oh shit, I had it in my head. And then I got to remember what I was saying, where I left off. I was saying that the voice gets louder, is what I was saying. Okay. So we froze for a second, but yeah, so the more that you don't listen to this voice, it gets even louder. But this is also, what I was speaking about before, that this is also why some things are harder to remove than other things, because it's not just one thing that causes it, right? There's like, this even goes back to what I was saying much earlier, where I was saying that when I was a kid, I would just stare at people and I felt like I was peeling them back like an onion, and I was seeing like way back to like a really hidden, deeper motive behind like a whole lot of other things that they were doing. So sometimes you have like one thing that can end up, branching out in these other directions and like inviting other things to sort of end up causing this sort of array of things built up on this one idea, um, but the point is that whether it's this association, or it's, just like rage, or severe frustration, or sickness, or some other mental illness, or some other emotional disturbance like depression, for example, all of these things obviously are not to be identified with. Once again, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, or even energetic, like you just are constantly feeling like, I have bad luck all the time, or why can I never manifest something that I want, over and over again.
Why do I attract the same man?
Yeah. Well, that can be a whole slew of various beliefs that a person has too, you know. So again, sometimes it's super quick and magical, just that one generational thing from my grandmother of, let me remove this from my hands. Or maybe your permission slip, you just believe it so intensely that everything that was supporting it just goes.
Yeah.
Which is definitely possible, and it's highly possible. And I feel like we're coming more and more into an energy
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
that allows that to be possible and allows things to happen like really, really quickly.
I
Or
totally agree with that.
whereas, sorry,
I second that.
yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. I'm noticing it. And I would just like to say to people who think maybe I have an entity, if you're feeling that maybe you have an entity and you feel like this thought, maybe you have a thought that comes, disagree with it one time and see how it feels. If you say, because for example, I've always had depression my whole
mhm,
life. I mean, I had a good reason for it, but now I don't have a reason for depression.
yeah,
And if I wake up first thing in the morning and I feel depressed, I know that's an entity. Because
yeah,
I'll think, why do I don't have any reason. There's no reason for me to feel this way. And it's not just depression, but that's the one I use because that's the one that really gets me. I'm like, why am I depressed? Like, and then I'm like, wait, I'm not depressed. That's an entity. It's trying to make me feel depressed. And as soon as I say,
right,
as soon as I like lock eyes on the entity, or it's like almost like interfacing with it. When you acknowledge it and you address it directly and you say,
yeah,
you're an entity, hello, it
hmm,
kind of it backs it kind of has a shift feeling, like you can tell that it's like being seen, so it doesn't have the intensity. And just that very subtle shift for me, because I'm sensitive to energy and energy is very subtle, but that very subtle shift that happens between me acknowledging the entity and the entity feeling acknowledged is enough of a shift for me to disidentify with it and go, that's right, I'm not depressed. That's not my feeling. And that's where the power comes in. Once you know that is not your feeling and you give yourself an opportunity to feel the shift of it, of not owning it anymore,
detachment.
that's the first, yes, that is the first step to removing those entities yourself or having help.
Yeah, exactly. Causing that separation where you no longer just trust what it's saying, basically, because that is what you're doing. You're trusting it in a sense because you're putting yourself in alignment with it. You're agreeing with it by saying, yeah, this is mine, whether you want it or not.
Yeah.
So they're having me use that word. They're having me say trust,
Yeah.
because it is like you're putting your trust in something, whether it's something that you actually want or that you don't want. You're putting your trust in the fact that, yeah, this is me. This belongs to me. I'm aligned with it. It's part of my energy field.
Right.
Um, and you're actually subconsciously, you're giving your trust to this thing by continuously agreeing with it. It is like you're trusting it, you're trusting its direction, its guidance for you, even though it's leading you to this ailment or you know emotional issue or whatever it is that you don't want. It's like you're allowing it to guide you in that moment, to the point that you're saying, like, you're aligning with it so much that you're saying, I own this. This is who I am. This is part of me. This is my thought. This is my emotion. This is my entity. Since you don't know since you're not realizing it's an entity,
Right.
but you're claiming it. You're bringing it more into your space. You're saying it's mine. You know, um, and so for that reason, it'll remain. It can always just stay with you. they can hang out and have a party with you, you know,
You know, it's friends.
depressed, addicted, you know, whatever kind of party it is, but it'll have one with you and it'll be really happy about it. You
I'm
know, you
sure. Yeah.
probably won't be, but it will be very happy about it. And also it will gain a lot of energy by it, which is why it will be happy. I mean, that's its drug.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it is gaining all of this energy from this depression or whatever it is that you are feeling, because by agreeing with that emotion or that thought or the ailment, you're feeding it. You know, it's the agreement that that is feeding it. It's not even the fact that it's there so much, because once you've agreed with it so much to the point that it's just coming up automatically, then even as you're disagreeing with it, it might be there for a while. You know, you might keep still feeling it there, but the point is you're disagreeing with it, and that right away begins to mute its energy. And even if it still gains a little bit, because there could obviously be parts of you that are agreeing with it still, which is why it's still able to give you the emotion, which is why maybe you're still feeling it there. At least, you know, the conscious part of you, at least a big part of you, is saying no to it and is saying, okay, no, I don't want to manifest this anymore. You're not me, and is disagreeing with it and disaligning with it. So,
Well, Anna, what a great interview. I feel like, you know, as usual, we could talk forever about these
I
things,
know,
but you
I
know,
know.
I feel like we've done well. Do you have anything else? Do you feel like we've covered everything that we can today?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I want to just say that this is like the most unlimiting thing that a person can do for themselves. You know, this is often shunned in the spiritual community. People don't want to look at their entities. They don't want to, you know, view their darkness, you know, or like their dark self in a sense, because they identify with that, you know, um, and they feel like this resistance, this push away, is what will keep them in a positive space, when actually it does the polar opposite of that, because that's the way that entities remain hidden. That's there's this song popping in my head of of Imagine Dragons. It
Hmm.
says, that's where my demons hide, that's where my demons hide. So that's how they hide,
Yeah.
you know. um the fact that you don't acknowledge them is what limits you, whereas if you acknowledge them, that would set you free. That would begin your journey of being set free from any problem that you have, any problem that you have whatsoever. And understanding that yourself, you, without this stuff, is totally unlimited. You know, it has just this vast, infinite potential that you can't even fathom. Just like with me in Christianity, you know, I was in this mindset, which now, because I've felt the differences and I witnessed that difference suddenly of having this entity removed, and suddenly I don't have that kind of vision of the religion, then I felt it almost like a mental illness. It felt like an insanity to me. Um, so just in that same way that I suddenly had this pullback, and I was able to see this clearly, you know, in that same way, that's how our blocks are. You know, we think, okay, or even we have to eat. You know, we think all of these things that are like so entrenched and so ingrained. And I'm using this thing of having to eat, because again, our soul is a natural breatharian. That sounds pretty intense for people, but I'm using that for the reason that that is such an ingrained just part of everybody's, just their action every day. They wake up in the morning, they eat, at lunch, they eat, at night, they eat, so they have snacks in between, maybe they even wake up at nighttime at one point and they go down and, eat some junk food, or something, because what are you really going to crave at night? Probably not a vegetable, maybe. Um, but it's this very like entrenched thing. That's why I'm using it. But imagine that there's a problem that you're going through all the time, and like, if you will look at the fact that the problem is detached from you, then it will begin to step back. That's the first point in removing it, like we've been saying. And visualize that, think of that. Like, you suddenly have this awareness of a new self. Really, that's what I had when I left. I had this new ability to see what was in front of me clearly. But it's the same way with anything. You have this sudden pullback from whatever this thing was, and you envision everything in a clearer way. And that's really what all of it is, because again, this place is all mind. So what's giving you the thoughts in your mind and the images of your mind? But really what I want to leave people with is that this is the ultimate and highest gift you can possibly give to yourself, is to look at your entities, to look at your thought forms, to look at the things in you that are attached to you, that are feeding off you and off your soul and off your light, because that dims your light and it limits you. That's what binds you. That's what connects you to this 3D experience in this really alternate way that we don't need to view it as, that our mind doesn't need to create. Like I said, even if a person chooses, yeah, I do want to transition through age and through death, they don't need to have all these debilitating, horrible, illnesses to create that, to have that as their experience, and they don't need to identify with it. So limiting yourself is what that spiritual programming and really entity is doing, because entities like to hide themselves, and it's only an entity that is going to say, I'm not real.
Yeah.
I'm not really there. You don't really have me. That's only an entity, because an entity wants to stay there. An entity wants to remain there and wants to kick your ass. It wants to steal all your energy. Meanwhile, you're suffering with some kind of debilitating problem that you are identifying with and viewing as your own, because you won't look at the fact that it is something other than you. So we need to understand that the shameful thing, okay, because it is such a shame to have this unlimited self and this unlimited potential, and just not look at the fact that that's who you are, and that this is other, that this isn't. So again, that's the most valuable gift that you can give yourself. It's the most freeing thing. It's the most liberating move that you can make, view that you can have, is to actually look at your own darkness and begin to actually explore it, and be willing to go through it, because it will change your life. And that is what will put you in alignment, in agreement with your unlimited potential, your unlimited self.
Allow me to provide a testimonial.
Absolutely.
I am, this is year 2020. I will be 48 this year. Nobody works harder on their self than I do. I have been self-aware for as long as I can remember, and I have been working on myself since I was 14, 13, 12, 11, for my whole life. Even when I was little, because of my circumstances, because of the negative environment I was in, I have been trying to be perfect my whole life. Not just with the things I do, but from within, because I was taught to believe that I'm worthless and that nothing I do is valuable. So I've been trying my hardest to be valuable. and to fix myself so that I will get the love that I feel like or that I want, that I need.
Mhm.
So I'm very, very self-aware and hyper into myself. And I will tell you that I have made a lot of progress in my life and done very well. However, I was never able to feel successful because there was always something that was just beyond my control. When I discovered a year ago, a little, maybe almost a year and a half through your readings for our family, that I had entities, that moment changed my life. I mean, it took me about a week or two to overcome the idea of what that means, and what it meant and what it has meant, and what it has done, what having entities has been responsible for in my life. But through the process of clearing them, like even if you were just to clear them and I weren't to do anything on my own, I would still feel a difference. But because I work with your clearings, and I'm in tune with myself, like I've always been, this additional assistance that your clearings have given me have completely changed my life in a way that I was never able to do on my own. I wasn't able to do it by myself. And believe me, I could have. If I were able to, I would have, but I wasn't able to. So getting your help was the boost that I needed to, it was like I'm chasing these things around and I don't know what I'm chasing. Finding out that it was an entity has given me something to target and to nail down. It's
Mhm.
like nailing jello to a wall, but at least I know what I'm going after. I'm not
Yeah.
attacking myself anymore. I'm going after these entities.
Yeah.
So it works. It works. It's real. It's very real. And you just, you can see results in your material world after you have done some of the, after you look at it. You can't find it unless you're looking, and they won't be found unless you find them.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. That's always really encouraging for me to hear. I mean, I obviously I get a lot of a lot of clients writing me and saying that, like, honestly, all of the clients that I do continuous sessions with, well, I mean, why would they get continuous sessions, obviously, if they weren't feeling the difference? So obviously I get this type of feedback, but this is the first time I've actually, you know, heard it in person like
Yeah,
this, one on one. So that is really encouraging, and I appreciate you saying that.
yeah. I mean, I'll tell you some more secrets after we push stop. And if you want to be a part of it, y'all, you're just gonna have to subscribe. I'm just kidding. Well, thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and just tell everybody watching that to thank you for joining us, for watching, and please do subscribe to On a Medium and the Immortality Process and mine. We'll put the links down
Yeah.
below. And if you want to share your experiences in a talk like this, please contact me, because we're expanding the collective consciousness just by having conversations and talking about our experiences. So we'd love to hear more stories.
Well, thank you for having me, Christina, and yeah, thank you all for tuning in.
Okay. Namaste.
Namaste.